Okay, welcome everybody to today's class. Today we're looking again at this book. This is my book. If you want some exercises about some of the topics we're going to be studying today, buy my book on Amazon, or you can send £12 to my PayPal address. I'll write it underneath the video and you can buy it like that. That's just for the PDF. The paperback is £16 on Amazon. Now today we're looking at gerunds, participles and verbs. But I want to make it clear that I'm going to be starting to make a lot of new videos on a different platform. I don't like YouTube. I'm not allowed to say what I want to say on YouTube, so I'm afraid YouTube will have to be abandoned. And I'll be putting my new channel address under the video. It's on a channel called Odyssey. And if you want to watch new material from myself, then please go to Odyssey. Subscribe to my channel on there because I'll be making very little content for YouTube in the future. I don't think that YouTube is suitable for my content personally, especially if I'm not allowed to say what I want to say. So please do join me on Odyssey and you will get all of that new material, and I'll carry on making lessons as I have always done, but I think I'll only be making one a month maximum for YouTube, possibly less. It depends how many people join me on Odyssey. So we're looking at gerunds, participles and verbs today, and there is a difference between all three. So the tricky thing is that gerunds always end in ing, participles, many of them, end in ing, and verbs, many of them end in ing. So they all look the same. That's why it's so tricky to tell the difference between all three. But I want to make it clear that they have different functions. The gerund is functioning as a noun, which means it's subject of a verb or object of a verb or object of a preposition. The participle's functioning as an adjective, which means it's describing a noun. And the verb has a doer, which means that it's very different from a participle, although sometimes they come very close, I must admit. So to understand all of this, the best way to do it is to see it in examples, to see lots of different sentences, and for somebody to ask you, is that a gerund, is that a participle, is that a verb, and for you to know from looking at the function of the word in the sentence. So I've taken today's text it's a book by Milan Kundera. It's called The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I haven't read it for years. I read it first when I was in my early 20s. I really enjoyed it. I did like the book. So I decided to just take an excerpt from that book. Now I'm going to speed up a little bit just because I've really got to be finished in 20 minutes to start my next class. Okay, so look at this first sentence. All languages that derive from Latin form the word compassion by combing. That must be combining the prefix, sorry guys, little mistake there, by combining the prefix meaning with, by combining the prefix meaning with, that's Latin for with, and the root meaning suffering. In late Latin, that is passio, passion. Okay, so let's look at this sentence and let's look at the different ing forms, and let's decide, are they nouns, gerunds, are they adjectives, participles, or are they verbs? So, all languages that derive. What kind of word is this? Well, this word is a verb. And I know it's a verb because it's got a doer. That's why. That is a pronoun standing in for all languages. Yeah, it's a pronoun, a relative pronoun, because it starts a relative clause. If you know about relative clauses, it's a lot easier to analyse sentences because they're everywhere, relative clauses. So we've got a relative pronoun here standing in for all languages. So it's all languages derive from Latin. Yeah, all languages that derive, which derive, we're describing which languages, we're defining which languages. The ones that derive from Latin form the word compassion in that way. So derive is a verb because it's got a subject, and all verbs have subjects, okay? Let's make that really clear. Any main clause must have a verb in it, and a verb will always have a doer, a subject. So this one's just a verb, yeah? Okay, then we've got a preposition and a noun from Latin. And here we've got, this is a verb in the relative clause, okay? This verb is within the relative clause. Here's the relative clause, yeah? This is a relative clause describing the subject of the main clause. And this is the subject, all languages is the subject of this word, which is also a verb. And we know it's a verb because it's got a doer. All languages form the word compassion, yeah? What forms the word compassion? All languages. So that's the doer. That's the subject. So we've got a verb because it's got a subject. We've got another verb because it's got a subject. The word compassion by combining. Now notice this is an ing word. Now if you know that by is a preposition, then you know that this must be a gerund because this is the object of the preposition by. Okay, so this one is a gerund because it's the object of a preposition, and we said that the object of a preposition is a noun, which means it's the verb functioning as a noun, it's a gerund. Okay, so we've got gerund combining the prefix meaning with. Let's look at this ing word, meaning. Now, what's this word doing? Is it coming after a preposition? Let's have a look. Prefix, no, it's a noun, isn't it? It's not a preposition. Is it the subject of a verb, meaning? Doesn't look like it. Is it the object of a verb, meaning? Doesn't look like it, although we'll have the object of a verb very soon. But here I want you to see that this meaning is actually describing the prefix. It's describing the noun prefix, which means that this word is a participle. This is a participle describing the noun prefix. What kind of prefix? A prefix meaning with, yeah? A prefix which means with. You can always change a participle phrase into a relative clause by adding a which or a that, yeah? We could say the prefix which means with, or we can say the prefix meaning with, and we can say all languages deriving from Latin, or we can say all languages that derive from Latin. And it's because a relative clause is an adjectival clause and a participle phrase is an adjectival phrase. They're both adjectives, that's why they're so similar. Okay, so we've got a participle here, and it's a participle because it's describing a noun prefix. Okay, then we've got this preposition with, and this is the prefix com, and a conjunction and a determiner and a noun. Now we've got an ing again, the root meaning suffering. So we had the prefix meaning with, now we've got the root meaning suffering. This is obviously another participle because it's describing the noun root, yeah? So it's a participle because it's describing a noun. Let's keep going. Suffering. Okay, now this seems to be the object of that participle, of that, let's call it partly a verb, yeah, because participle does mean partly a verb, partially, but really it's functioning as an adjective. But notice that what the root means suffering, yeah, the root means suffering. So this suffering is the object of meaning. It means suffering. The root means suffering. And because it's the object of a participle, it must be a gerund. Any objects must be nouns. It's functioning as the object of meaning, the root which means suffering. Yeah, so it's the object of means or the object of meaning. So it must be a gerund, this one. Yeah, it's a gerund for that reason. Okay, and in late Latin, suffering is passio. In other languages, Czech, Polish, German and Swedish, for instance, this word is translated. Now here we've got a verb, is translated. Notice we can call it a two-word verb, yeah? Auxiliary verb, main verb, and it's because it's in the passive form. Is translated is passive tense, okay? It's a verb because it's got a doer, word is translated, this word is translated, okay? Then we've got by a noun formed. Now formed ends in ed and participles end in ing or ed. So we already know it's going to be a participle because gerunds don't end in ed, yeah? They don't, they only end in ing. So we know it's going to be a participle really. Is it a verb though? I suppose you might say, well, it might be a verb. Let's have a look. Where are we? By a noun formed of an equivalent prefix. Now it's a verb if the noun formed something. but it's not a verb if the noun was formed of something. And so this is not a verb. This formed is describing the noun. It's not what the noun did. And this is a really subtle point I'm trying to make. It's quite hard for people to see that there's a difference between cars made in Japan and I made a cake. I made a cake, that's a verb. Made is a verb. But cars made in Japan, the cars didn't make anything. So it's not a verb, it's a participle there. And here, it's not a verb. The noun didn't form something. The noun was formed of an equivalent prefix. So this is a participle. Once again, we could change it to a relative clause by a noun which was formed. We could do that if we wanted to. And that's showing us that that's a participle. Okay, then we've got a preposition, a determiner, an adjective and a noun combined, of an equivalent prefix by a noun formed of equivalent prefix combined with the word that means feeling. Now this combined, I hope you can see that it's got exactly the same function as formed. It's doing exactly the same thing. It's describing the noun, of an equivalent prefix combined. Sorry, no, it's still a participle, just like formed. Formed was describing the noun and combined is describing the prefix. Sorry, I made a small mistake there. But combined is describing the prefix. Okay, what was the prefix? The prefix was combined with the word that means feeling. Okay, so this is a participle because it's not what the prefix did. The prefix didn't combine something. The prefix was combined by something else. And then we've got with the word that means, well, this is another relative clause, which means, that means, see how useful relative clauses are? And that means that this must be a verb. It must be a verb because it's got a doer, and that doer is the relative pronoun that, standing in for the noun word. Okay, let's keep going. Compassio means we can't look on coolly as others suffer. So I hope you can see that this is a verb because it's got a doer. Compassio means, that's certainly a verb, but it means, now here, the relative clause has dropped the that. No, it hasn't, sorry. Making a small mistake there. It's very easy to mix up that as a subordinating conjunction as that as a relative pronoun, but this is, the object of means. So compassio means, we've got verb because compassio is the doer, it's what means. We can't look, okay, there's another verb with a doer, subject, verb. We can't look on coolly as others suffer. Okay, we've got another verb here, suffer, because others are doing the suffering. Others are suffering, so it's definitely a verb, it's got a doer. Another word with approximately the same meaning, pity. Notice the commas here. The commas are there for the appositive. I go on about appositives all the time. And this book goes on a lot about appositives, loads of exercises on appositives and relative clauses and participle phrases. So please buy this book if you're interested in these topics. So pity is an appositive, renaming another word. This is an adjectival prepositional phrase. It's describing another word. Another word, what kind of other word? Another word with approximately the same meaning describes another word. Pity renames another word. So this is the appositive. Connotes. Okay, finally we've got the verb. This is the verb and the subject is another word. Another word connotes a certain condescension. So he's making the point here that pity is actually a very unhealthy emotion, and that pity, which a lot of people think is something wonderful, is actually extremely unhealthy, and it's a way of looking down on other people. It's a way of condescending, a way of being arrogant. It's not necessarily a good thing, not in all circumstances. And I happen to agree with him here. So it's got a verb, connotes, with a doer, subject, a certain condescension towards the sufferer. So we've got no verbs, no gerunds, no participles here. To take pity on a woman. Notice we've got a 2+ infinitive as subject here. So it's not just gerunds and participles that can be, well, gerunds can be subjects of verbs, but also 2+ infinitive can be subject of a verb. So here, to take pity on a woman means that we are better off than she, that we stoop down to her level to help her, and lower ourselves. I think he's absolutely right here, and I think a lot of people have had a very low opinion of pity, because people who pity others have a very low opinion of others. They don't see them as good people or strong people or independent people. They see them as unable to do things for themselves. They see them as children, basically, as they have a very low opinion of them when they pity them. Okay, so we've got a verb here, means, and it's a verb because it's got a doer. To take pity on a woman is the doer. A verb phrase can be a noun. Yeah, a verb phrase can function as a noun. Gerunds are verb phrases that function as nouns, but 2+ infinitives can function as nouns as well. So we've got a verb, and then we've got a subordinating conjunction, and then we've got a subject, we, and then a verb, are. Better off is like a phrasal verb which is used as an adjective. To be better off means to be in a better position, especially financially. Than she. Now notice that Milan Kundera has used the correct subject pronoun, she. He didn't say than her, okay? He didn't say than her. He said than she. And that's really interesting to me. That is the more correct way of doing it, really. But in everyday English, we never do that. We always say than her. Okay, so in everyday English, we say than her. But in formal, correct English, you ought to say than she. That we stoop to her level. Stoop is a verb. It's got a doer, we. Yeah, stoop to her level. And that we lower ourselves. Really, this is a verb. And it means that we stoop to her level. There's one verb phrase, asyndetic coordination, and another verb phrase, we lower ourselves. Yeah, we stoop to her level, we lower ourselves. And I agree again, we do stoop to a lower level when we take pity on someone or something. Okay, this is why the word compassion generally inspires suspicion. So we've got a verb here with is, and why the word compassion generally inspires is clearly a verb because it's got a doer. Here, the word compassion is the doer, the subject. This is the verb, and there's the object, suspicion. It designates, okay, we've got a verb, designates, it's got a doer, it, subject, verb. It designates what is considered, okay. Here we've got a noun clause, yeah. It designates, this noun clause is the object of designates. Remember these noun clauses, we did these recently. And again, loads of information about noun clauses in here. Please buy the book if you would like more practice. And yeah, this is the verb is considered, and the subject here is what is considered. An inferior, a second-rate sentiment. Then we've got that has little. Okay, so we've got a subject, that, and a verb, has. That has little to do with love. Maybe you know this expression, to have something to do with means to be connected, and to have little to do with means to be virtually unconnected. Unrelated in that sense. So it has little to do with love. To love someone out of compassion means not really to love. Again, I totally agree. There's no such thing as loving someone out of pity. It's actually not a very nice thing to do. So to love someone is the subject. To love someone out of compassion, in fact, is the subject. Again, we've got a 2+ infinitive phrase being used as the subject of a verb, and the verb is means. Just like to take pity on a woman means. To love someone out of compassion means. The repetition, of course, it's intentional. And yeah, to love someone out of compassion means not really to love. Okay, so you've got a verb there and you've got the subject. I hope that's made things a little bit clearer about what gerunds are, participles are, and verbs. Because I think if you get these three things separate in your head, it's a lot easier to analyse different sentences. One of the trickiest things is seeing the difference between gerunds and participles and verbs, especially verbs. But when you can do that, it does make it easier to break the sentence up into different parts. Okay, so thank you for everybody for watching. Please send me some money and I'll send you this PDF, and please join me on Odyssey. Don't sit around on YouTube. YouTube has become boring, it's become rubbish. Let's go to another platform where I can say whatever the hell I like, and where you can perhaps listen to more interesting videos, listen to more interesting information, and not be restricted, not be limited by what you can see. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you all soon.